Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling utterly exhausted, as if you've just run a marathon, but you can't quite pinpoint why? It's a strange, lingering depletion, a subtle heaviness that settles in your bones long after the words have faded. You may have just spent an hour with a friend, a sibling, or even one of your own children, yet instead of feeling uplifted or connected, you feel smaller, drained, as if a quiet, unseen tap was opened and your own precious life force was siphoned away. When you cross the threshold of 70, this feeling is no longer just a minor annoyance. Peace of mind ceases to be a luxury and becomes an absolute necessity. You've weathered the storms of life, navigated the complex currents of career and family, and accumulated a lifetime of wisdom. You have earned, through sheer endurance and experience, the right to inhabit a space of tranquility, to live your days without the constant hum of tension, guilt, or emotional manipulation. Yet, some people in our lives, often those who have been there the longest, are masters of a quiet kind of erosion. They don't arrive with a thunderclap or a dramatic scene. There are no raised voices, no slammed doors. Instead, they are like a slow, persistent drizzle of acidic rain, subtly chipping away at the bedrock of your joy. They wear you down in ways that are maddeningly difficult to articulate, but painfully easy to feel. And for so long, we do nothing. We keep them around because it feels polite, because it's what's expected, or because the thought of changing a dynamic that has existed for decades feels too monumental to even consider. But here lies a profound truth, one that often only becomes clear in the golden light of our later years. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table simply because they've always been there. History does not grant someone a perpetual license to disturb your peace. In this conversation today, we are going to delve deep into 4 specific types of people you should consider quietly, gracefully, and resolutely cutting off after 70. This isn't about scorched earth tactics, bitter confrontations, or dramatic pronouncements. It is about a calm, silent, and deliberate act of self-preservation. It's about recognizing the people who bring more stress than support, more judgment than joy, and more chaos than care. You don't need to justify your decision to them. You don't need to explain your need for space. You simply need to become the fierce, unwavering guardian of your energy, your time, and your spirit, because these resources are more precious now than they have ever been. I urge you to stay with me through this entire discussion, because the final person on this list is the one most of us overlook, the one we make the most excuses for, and learning to create distance from them might just be the greatest and most liberating gift you ever give yourself. The first figure we must learn to recognize is the one I call the chronic critic. This individual is a master of the subtle takedown, an artist of the backhanded compliment, a connoisseur of finding the single flaw in a field of achievements. There seems to be a cloud of dissatisfaction that follows them, and they are intent on making it rain on your parade. No matter what you do, what you create, or what you share, they will find the one thread to pull that threatens to unravel the whole tapestry. Their criticism is a constant, low-grade hum of disapproval that over time can profoundly alter the way you see yourself. You know this person intimately. You call them to share some wonderful news. Perhaps your grandchild got into a great college in California, or your garden finally produced the most beautiful heirloom tomatoes. Instead of sharing in your joy, their response is laced with a but. It might sound something like, "That's nice, but is he sure about that major? It's very competitive." Or, "Those tomatoes look good, but are you sure they're organic? You have to be so careful with pesticides." You spend weeks knitting a beautiful, complex afghan for a new baby in the family, a labor of love poured into every stitch. You present it with pride, and the first thing the chronic critic says is, "Oh, you missed a stitch right there in the corner." The joy deflates from you like a punctured balloon. These critics often disguise their negativity as just being honest or trying to be helpful. They position themselves as the pragmatist, the realist, the one brave enough to tell you the hard truths. But their words don't feel helpful. They feel heavy. They land not as constructive feedback, but as tiny, sharp stones, and you carry their weight long after the interaction is over. Have you ever felt that sting of criticism from someone who was supposed to support you? That moment where your pride turned to doubt because of one small comment? If this resonates with you, just type the number 1 in the comments below. It's a silent acknowledgement that you've been there and you understand this particular brand of hurt. The deeper truth is that chronic criticism is almost never about you. It is a distorted reflection of the critic's own inner world. Their negativity is a mirror showing their own unhappiness, their own sense of powerlessness, or their own unfulfilled dreams. Some people criticize to feel a semblance of control in a life where they feel they have none. By pointing out your flaws, they momentarily elevate themselves. Others are deeply insecure, and keeping you small ensures that you never outshine them. Over decades, if you are not vigilant, you can begin to internalize their narrative. You start to question your own judgment. You bite your tongue before sharing an idea. You shrink your voice, not because you believe you are wrong, but because you are bone-tired of the inevitable dissection and disapproval. At this stage of life, that dynamic is not just unnecessary, it is actively harmful. You have lived long enough. You have weathered enough real storms. You no longer need to stand in an artificial rain of someone else's making. The chronic critic rarely changes. No amount of your patience, grace, or gentle explanation will suddenly transform them into a wellspring of encouragement. But you can change. You can change how much real estate you allow them to occupy in your mind and in your life. Silently cutting them off is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of profound wisdom. It is the quiet recognition of who adds genuine value to your life and who quietly, persistently chips away at your spirit. The process begins with creating distance. Stop being the one to initiate contact. When they call you, keep the conversations brief, polite, and informational. Do not offer up your new projects, your deep thoughts, or your tender joys for their inspection. You are not required to provide them with ammunition. This is not about being cold. It is about being a discerning gatekeeper of your own heart. And most importantly, you must actively seek out and surround yourself with people who celebrate you, not scrutinize you. Find the friends who hear your good news and whose immediate reaction is a genuine, unadulterated, "That's wonderful." You are not here to be someone else's project or punching bag. You are here to live out your days with dignity, confidence, and joy. The first, most crucial step is to quietly and firmly close the door on anyone who has never learned how to see your worth without trying to diminish it. This brings us to another, more insidious character who operates in the shadows of our relationships: the emotional manipulator. This person's control isn't wielded through overt anger or direct demands. It is a far more subtle and corrosive force, delivered through a sophisticated arsenal of guilt, strategic silence, and a constant underlying pressure that makes you feel perpetually responsible for their emotional state. As you age, this kind of relationship becomes exceptionally dangerous. It traps you in exhausting cycles of confusion, self-doubt, and emotional fatigue that can systematically dismantle your well-being without you ever seeing the puppeteer pulling the strings. This person could be anyone: a lifelong friend, a sibling, a cousin, or, most painfully, one of your own adult children. They have mastered the art of not saying what they mean. Instead, they deploy loaded silences that hang in the air, thick with unspoken accusation. They express a vague, impenetrable disappointment that leaves you scrambling to figure out what you've done wrong. They use backhanded compliments that feel more like insults, like, "It's so great you're finally taking up painting, Mom. Most people your age just give up." The implication, of course, is that you were on the verge of giving up. Their favorite phrases are weapons disguised as vulnerable feelings. You might hear things like, "I guess I just expected more from you," after you've already given all you can. Or the classic guilt trip. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine alone for Thanksgiving. It's more important that you do what makes you happy." These statements are not genuine expressions of emotion. They are carefully crafted tools designed to make you feel indebted, ashamed, or guilty, compelling you to change your behavior to alleviate their supposed pain. What makes emotional manipulation so profoundly damaging is its covert nature. It's like a gas leak, invisible, silent, but utterly toxic. You don't realize the danger until you're already feeling dizzy and disoriented. Do you ever find yourself rehearsing conversations in your head before you speak to a certain person? Do you feel a knot of anxiety in your stomach when you see their name on your phone? If you do, that's a powerful sign. It means you're walking on eggshells, constantly trying to preempt a negative emotional reaction. You second-guess your own instincts and find yourself rearranging your schedule, your priorities, and even your own life, all to avoid upsetting them. It is a quiet, steady erosion of your confidence, leaving you exhausted and unsure of who you are in their presence. I'd love to know if this is something you've encountered. Have you ever felt like you were walking on eggshells around someone you love? Share your experience in the comments. You might be surprised how many others have walked that same treacherous path. Here is the difficult but necessary truth. Manipulators do not stop because their power is derived directly from your reaction. The more you try to explain yourself, the more you apologize for perceived slights, the more they are able to twist the narrative to maintain control. They don't actually want understanding, they want compliance. This isn't a relationship, it's a quiet hostage situation where your peace of mind is the ransom. After 70, your time, your clarity, and your emotional energy are currencies far too valuable to be spent in this bankrupting exchange. You have the right to opt out. You do not have to respond to the bait of manipulation. You do not have to defend your choices. You do not even have to announce your departure from the game. You can simply step back. Limit the conversations that consistently leave you feeling guilty or confused. If you must be around them, try to do so in a group setting where their tactics are less effective. Keep your responses to their loaded questions short, neutral, and clear. A simple, "I'm sorry you feel that way," is a complete sentence. It acknowledges their feeling without accepting responsibility for it. Above all, you must learn to trust your gut. Your intuition, honed over 7 decades, is your most reliable guide. If someone consistently makes you feel smaller, more anxious, or emotionally burdened, it is not your job to fix them or their unhappiness. It is your job to free yourself. Emotional manipulation thrives in the silence of its victims, but healing too thrives in silence. When you quietly walk away from that toxic energy, you are not abandoning someone. You are choosing peace. You are choosing sanity. You are choosing yourself. And that is not selfish. It is the epitome of wisdom. But it's not just overt criticism or covert manipulation that can drain us. Sometimes, the depletion comes from a dynamic that feels, on the surface, almost benevolent. This leads us to our third archetype, the chronic taker. We are taught from a young age that relationships are about give and take. But some relationships aren't built on that balanced equation. They are simply take and take and take some more. If you've lived past 70, you have undoubtedly encountered this person. The chronic taker is the individual who always seems to be in a state of need. They need a ride, a loan, a listening ear, your time, your advice, or your energy. But when the tables are turned and you are the one in need, they are suddenly, inexplicably unavailable or full of well-rehearsed excuses. Over time, this profound imbalance doesn't just wear you down, it actively steals from your health, your peace, and your freedom. These individuals don't always present as malicious or demanding. In fact, many have perfected the art of presenting themselves as perpetually helpless or constantly in crisis. Their life is a series of small emergencies that only you, it seems, can solve. It might be the adult child in his 40s who only calls when rent is due or his car breaks down again, his voice full of manufactured panic. It could be the friendly neighbor from down the block in a lovely suburb of Chicago who always just needs a quick hand with her groceries or asks if you can watch her dog for just an hour, which inevitably turns into 6. It could be that old friend who, for 30 years, has conveniently forgotten their wallet every time you go out for lunch, laughing it off with a charm that has long since worn thin. On their own, each request seems small, but when you string them together over months and years, you see a pattern not of friendship, but of exploitation. It's not charming, it's draining. This becomes especially critical as you get older. Your time is no longer an infinite resource to be parceled out. Your energy is more limited and must be invested wisely. Every quick favor you do for the chronic taker is a direct withdrawal from the account of your own life. It's one less hour you have to spend on your hobbies, your rest, your health, or the people who genuinely reciprocate your love and support. If you find this content valuable and it's helping you see some of your own relationships more clearly, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing. Your support helps us create more content like this to empower our community. Here's the core issue. Chronic takers rarely change. And why would they? They have successfully built a system that works perfectly for them. A system where you are the one who constantly adjusts, sacrifices, and bends over backward to meet their needs. The more you give, the more they come to expect it as their due. They may not even be consciously aware of the extent of their reliance on you, because you have allowed it to become completely normal. That is the danger. The dynamic calcifies and starts to feel like just the way things are. And then there's the guilt, a taker's most effective tool. When you finally hesitate or push back, they are quick to deploy phrases designed to pull at your sense of duty. "I guess I just thought I could count on you," or "No one else is ever there for me like you are." These words are precision engineered to make you feel like a bad person for setting a boundary. But let's be perfectly clear. Being a kind and available person does not mean you are obligated to be a constantly used person. Being generous does not mean you have to allow yourself to be taken advantage of. At this stage in your life, you have more than earned the right to say no. Not because you are being rude or unkind, but because you are finally being fair to yourself. Saying no does not require a 5-page explanation. It does not need drama or a lengthy confrontation. You can simply and politely stop making yourself the automatic solution to everyone else's problems. Perhaps you start by letting their calls go to voicemail, giving yourself time to think before responding. Maybe you politely decline the next request with a simple, "I'm sorry, I'm not able to do that right now." You can let them figure out their own ride, their own loan, their own solution for once. You are not being unkind. You are teaching them, and more importantly, reminding yourself that your life is not a public utility for others to manage. When you begin to limit a chronic taker's access to your resources, something truly amazing happens. You get your energy back. You reclaim your calendar. You suddenly find hours in your week that you didn't know you had. You realize just how much of your life was being quietly redirected by someone else's endless needs, and you finally get to choose something better. You get to choose you. Beyond the takers and manipulators lies another, perhaps more common drain on our life force. This is the person who can cast a long, dark shadow on even the sunniest of days. This is our fourth archetype, the negative soul. This is the individual who seems to have a PhD in pessimism, who finds something wrong with absolutely everything. If you share a piece of good news, they will immediately find a reason to downplay it or introduce a seed of worry. If you express enthusiasm for trying something new, they will present you with a detailed list of all the ways it could go horribly wrong. And if you simply want to exist in a moment of quiet contentment, they will fill the air with a litany of complaints, criticisms, or dire warnings about the state of the world. You have almost certainly met someone like this. Maybe you've even kept them in your inner circle out of a sense of habit, obligation, or a shared history that stretches back decades. But after the age of 70, exposure to this kind of relentless negativity becomes more than just an irritant. It can have a measurable detrimental effect on your own health, your mood, and your entire outlook on life. We don't need a formal scientific study to confirm what we feel in our bones. Being around a deeply negative person is emotionally and physically exhausting. It quite literally drains the joy right out of you. This isn't about someone who is simply a realist or who voices legitimate concerns from time to time. We all need friends who can help us see potential pitfalls. No, this is about the chronic naysayer, the one who seems constitutionally incapable of letting a positive moment exist without tainting it. They are the ones who, upon hearing you've booked a wonderful cruise to Alaska, will immediately start talking about norovirus outbreaks on cruise ships. They are the ones who see your beautiful new grandchild and comment on how expensive college will be in 18 years. They might dwell endlessly on the political news of the day, criticize every decision made by their friends and neighbors, or even belittle your own small joys under the guise of just being realistic. Whatever their particular style, the result is always the same. You walk away from the interaction feeling heavier, more anxious, and a little less hopeful than you were before. Have you ever noticed how your own mood can plummet after just a few minutes with someone like this? It's a very real phenomenon. Tell us in the comments below, who is the most positive person in your life? Let's take a moment to celebrate the people who lift us up. Here is a truth that many people are reluctant to admit. Negativity is contagious. It operates like emotional secondhand smoke. When you are exposed to it frequently, you inevitably start to inhale some of it. You might find yourself second-guessing your own optimistic plans. You might start to internalize their critical worldview, questioning your own value, or beginning to expect the worst in every situation. That is the quiet, cumulative damage that a negative soul can inflict, not through direct personal attacks, but through the steady, demoralizing drip of disapproval, worry, and gloom. And here is something else to consider, a vital point for this chapter of your life. Your emotional space has become sacred ground. You have already navigated enough real-world tragedies and disappointments. You do not need to volunteer to carry the weight of someone else's manufactured dark clouds. You deserve, now more than ever, to spend your precious time with people who uplift you. People who celebrate your growth, who encourage your curiosity, and who make room for joy instead of smothering it with cynicism. It is not always simple to create distance from a negative soul, especially if they are a close family member or someone you've known since you were young. But separating from their energy does not always require a dramatic severing of ties. You can quietly and intentionally reduce the amount of time you spend with them. You can make a conscious choice not to engage when they start down a familiar path of complaint. You can gently change the subject to something more neutral or positive. You are, in essence, building an emotional firewall to protect your own inner peace without having to announce its construction to the world. When you do this, a subtle but profound shift happens within you. Your mind feels lighter. Your days seem brighter. You find yourself looking forward with anticipation instead of looking over your shoulder with dread. Because life after 70 is not about learning to tolerate what brings you down. It is about actively, courageously, and unapologetically choosing what lifts you up. As we draw this conversation to a close, let's reflect on the powerful clarity that age provides. Getting older gives you a kind of vision that no optometrist can prescribe. You begin to see people not just for the roles they play or the history you share, but for who they truly are at their core, measured by a simple yet profound metric: how they make you feel when you are in their presence. That feeling, that sense of being either lifted up or dragged down, is a form of wisdom you should never, ever ignore. Deciding to quietly cut someone off is not an act of revenge, punishment, or anger. It is an act of profound self-respect. It is about choosing peace over chaos, healing over recurring hurt, and personal growth over stagnant guilt. At this stage of life, your emotional energy is your most valuable asset. It is not a renewable resource to be carelessly spent on people who drain it, damage it, or disrespect it. You do not owe anyone your constant presence, especially if that presence comes at the cost of your own well-being. Not the subtle critic, not the guilt-tripping manipulator, not the self-centered taker, and not the soul-crushing naysayer. They had their chance, over years and decades, to be a source of support and light in your life. If they consistently chose to bring confusion, bitterness, or sorrow into your world, then walking away isn't rude. It is the wisest, most loving thing you can do for yourself. And let's be perfectly honest with ourselves. This journey is not just about removing the negative. It is, more importantly, about making space for the positive. When you begin to prune the withered, toxic branches from the tree of your life, you create the necessary room for new, healthy growth to flourish. When you quietly close the door on those who pull you down, you open a window for the people who will lift you up. You make space for more laughter, more genuine support, more deep understanding, and more authentic love. I have seen far too many good, kind people waste the precious final chapters of their story trying to fix what is fundamentally unfixable. They hold on to toxic relationships out of a misplaced sense of loyalty, a fear of loneliness, or a lifetime of conditioned guilt. But I want to leave you with a question. What if the best, most beautiful parts of your story haven't been written yet, simply because the wrong people were still holding the pen? You deserve better. You have earned better. And the beautiful, liberating truth is that you get to choose. You are the author, the editor, and the publisher of your life story from this day forward. You can decide who gets a cameo and who gets a starring role. You can write your own piece. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We would be truly honored to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one insight you learned today and how you plan to use it to protect your own peace. Your thoughts and experiences are incredibly important to our community, so please don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please show your support by giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the notification bell so you never miss what's next. Your support is what allows us to continue creating meaningful content designed to inform and inspire. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.